Okay, so we're going to do this lovely Scottish loch today. It's actually one of the ones in Scotland, and we've got a choice of some really beautiful pictures. And I thought it'd be really nice to start back our first session on a nice landscape. It's quite wintry. I know at the moment we're okay. There's not too much. We haven't got. It's not too cold yet. Um, not in North Yorkshire anyway, but there's some really kind of classic wintry colours here that we tend to see quite a lot as the months do get a little bit colder. So that will be really nice, and also it's just kind of really typical of the wintry stillness we often get, which is just really calm, isn't it, and peaceful. So I thought that would be a nice one to do. So there's all sorts. So I'm going to demonstrate this one, but you can choose any picture at all, and it'll apply to pretty much anything that we've got that I've sent through to you anyway, in the way that we approach doing this. So that'll work really well. So I've just got my canvas board to work on, or you might have canvas paper, acrylic paper, or even a canvas. It's entirely up to you how you work. If you're wanting, I'd say probably if you're wanting to kind of really get into all the little bits today, don't go maybe any bigger than A4. If you want to go to A3, that's fine, but you might need to use bigger brushes and things like that. Otherwise, it will take a lot longer, and it's fine to take that time. I know even sometimes when we work in A3, we like to get into the details, but just in terms of the expectation of time that we tend to over the 2 hours, the bigger the canvas, the more time it will take us to do a piece. It's as simple as that, really. Yeah, so it's lovely, absolutely lovely. So I've also got a piece of tester paper here, which is so important when we are experimenting with colour, and testing out all the colours that we mix, because I think really with acrylic paints, a lot of it is in the mixing of the colours and trying to get a palette that we really, of colour that we really like actually, and we're really attracted to as well. So I've also got a paper palette here where I'm going to mix up some of my colours on, but you can use a normal palette. You can even use like a plate that you can wash off, or anything like that, or a palette with the wells in it. Just need somewhere around the wells on the palette, if you've got one of those, just to kind of mix the colours in between and everything, so that you've got plenty of space to try out. So I've also got in my brushes, I've got a flat brush. Now this is a bigger flat brush, this is a smaller one. So again, I tend to go in with a bigger brush when I'm kind of blocking out some of these background colours, and the bigger brushes for the backgrounds work quite well, or you could even use a bigger round as well for those first layers, and I'll explain a bit more about that in a mo. And then I've got some other finer thinner brushes for the details at the front, and some of the kind of trunks of the trees, and some of the foliage and things like that, which we'll put on much nearer to the end. So with acrylics, we tend to use, especially with landscapes, or I tend to use something called a layered approach, where we're building up layers of paint from back to front, and not just the back of the kind of picture, but what we're trying to work out is what comes first, and what layer comes over the top, and what colours come over the top. So with clouds and things like that, there's a lot going on. So this is really good kind of to start looking at what colours, because we've got these kind of wispy clouds and things overlapping some of the colours, and it's working out what overlaps what, and what kind of how to put those layers on. But I also am going to work top down. And you don't have to do this. It's absolutely fine if you don't. The reason I'm working top down is that I've got some layers of the hills and things come over the top. So I'd like to kind of get the sky on behind, and then overlap some of these mountains and everything here. So with sketching, I do really very little sketching when it comes to landscapes, because we tend to paint over it a lot as well, and because we have a lot of blocks of areas, like got a block of trees here, we've got some blocks of mountains, and some of the mountains here. And then, you know, we've got block of colour here in the middle, like, and then the reflection. We tend really just to end up going over what we've drawn. But I think what is quite helpful for people is to just work out whereabouts is halfway, you know, and that will, with most of the pictures, we tend to get with the landscapes, we get, you know, a separation of sky, water, or sky, land, mountains, hills, trees, etc., hedgerows sometimes, all sorts of things. And that's just a natural way for us to kind of separate where we're going to put our drawing, our lines and things like that. So I do put that down just because I think it helps us to work out what the proportions, then when you've got it separated into half, how much of the mountains take up of the sky, etc. So you can work, as I said, you can work with any of them. It doesn't really matter which picture you do, because you can just work out whereabouts the water line comes to. But I'm going to pop this in. I think it's just very much just under about halfway. Now these pictures will scale right up to any A size, because that's what they are in small. So you could even go up to like a huge A1 if you ever wanted to do anything bigger with these pictures. And we can just use, I haven't got it on here, but we can do it. Let's pop up the line in. What we can use is like a 4/4 grid, if that helps. So with more complicated things with a lot of perspective, that helps really well. So I'm just going to put a little line just so we can see. So when I say a 4/4 grid, I never go any more complicated than that, to be fair. And it's difficult to see that anyway, actually, that pencil line there. So it just helps us kind of working out whereabouts hills come to on this side and things like that. So I'm just going to go in. If you're popping yours on with your pencil, just make it nice and light, because it can scrub up when we're using light colours, if our pencil line is too dark. However, I always make mine dark enough so that you can see it on the camera. So mine will be, you know, it will be darker. So I'm just going to pop, have a little look. That's the other thing as well, is that you can see this very light line of reflection here. It is quite straight. So if you want to make that straight, just use like till we come to the middle. That's probably about there, isn't it? Just use like a straight edge to help you, actually, if you want to. That's easier. Use all sorts of helpful guides and things. And then when I'm looking at this side, it actually comes across here, and a lot of this is observation. We get really, really good at observation when we're looking at these pictures and things like that. So we can see it comes across straight for a little while, but then this little, there's like a little bank here, bank of snow, and that kind of comes round. So I'm going to bring it across to where I think it comes to. It looks straight. And then just going to then follow this bank here. And it kind of comes down here and then almost comes round there. This is a bank of snow. So I will bring that round a little bit. I don't know the exact measurements. I'm not going to worry about that, because we can actually pop these things in over the top with our, you know, with our paint. That's what I was going to say. And we often do, you know, just change things ever so slightly as we go. So yeah, so I've got an idea now that we've got these two sections. Things like the stones. The only ones I probably will pop in are these big stones here, these big rocks. I'm not going to bother with those. The reason being, we've got kind of some wooden twigs and things, and we've got a lot of this lake coming through. So it can be really faffy to try and paint the loch around these rocks and stones. So we just can actually just layer these up and paint these over the top, because the beauty of working with acrylic is it's opaque, so it will go over the top. Whereas if we're using watercolor, it won't, but it will with acrylic. We could even do white onto a black background by layering it up. So I'm going to leave all of these little things off. I'm not going to put in any of these tree lines or anything of the details in at all, because we'll end up painting over them with the back layers. We'll put those on as we go. But I will pop in this little rock here just because it's fairly chunky, and it means that we can, you know, it's fairly fairly good to get those in. And I'm just kind of working out proportionally how much it kind of fits into this block at the bottom. So again, it's not going to be perfect, but this is what I was saying. The thing is, actually, it doesn't really matter either, because you're the artist, and actually nobody knows exactly how big that rock is. So it really doesn't matter. So yes, we've got that going on. As I said, I'm not putting any of that in at all. What I will put in is I'll start to just work out proportionally. I don't know, that's just working out how far. It's probably a quarter of this section down these rocks here. Just gives us an idea if you wanted to kind of get to grips with it. So that's half of that quarter up here. That's about a quarter. So I know it pretty much all comes up to here. So I can then start to kind of, you know, split these areas up. So I know that the it comes down, this rock at the back comes down like this. So I'm just going to pop this rock in place, and the other one coming behind it. It kind of disappears, doesn't it, behind the behind this bank of cloud, which we can pop in later. And then we've got the other one that comes up here. And then we've got another bit of this, which comes down here. We have these, I think, are trees. So if you want to kind of make that line a bit wiggly, just remind yourself it's trees, that's fine. And then we've got another bit of a bank here, there. So it just helps us to kind of get an idea of what's going on with this, the composition, how everything's laid out on the page, really. And then we've got this little middle section here that comes over, which I think again is more trees, but I'm not putting the detailing, so we'll do that with a brush. And we've got a bank of trees here. So what I might just do with that is just start to kind of just wiggle, just make a kind of a wiggly line here. Like that, and then I can work into that and break it up as we go. But it's just, again, it just gives us helps us be a little bit more successful, because we've got some idea of what's going on. And I won't put this one in here until we get nearer to the end. So I'm just going to leave that clear so that I get the sky in behind it. And again, it's nice to have that nice and you know, carefully in there. Okay. So yeah, so there's only a few details in, just enough to get us going, really. So so I'm just going to start with this sky behind, and again, this is where we kind of get into having a go at mixing the colours. So I'll just pop that there. So with the acrylics, what we can actually do to get, if we want this kind of to feel a bit more blended, so we can kind of move the paint around, and we can move it a little bit into the other colour, not really mixing it on the page, because we want to avoid doing that. But when we kind of start to move the paint and we've got it on, it's much thicker than watercolour, it goes on. So and that way we can kind of control it getting to like running in, the colours kind of running into each other, and it's nice to kind of use the paint a bit more thickly, just to see what it's like to do it like that. I'll start to kind of mix and test the colours, so that I've got this area over here which is darker. I'm going to try some colours out for this kind of cloud here, and I'm going to look at the other colours that are in the sky, because skies are so fascinating, there's so much in it, you know. And look at these colours, which are almost like, again, it's what you can see there, what they look like to you. To some people it might be a pinky colour, it might be a purpley colour to other people, and then we've got some what I can see is a bit of a peachy colour tone, and then some yellows, and then some kind of quite much brighter areas, which are kind of more of a white in here, white tint. When I say a tint, it's just white mixed with another colour, and we use quite a lot of that for these pastel shades, which is how it differs quite a lot from the watercolour. So what I'm going to do is start to kind of get some colours out, and I'll go through the colours with you as a helpful guide as well, if you want. If not, if you know what you're going to use, etc., that's absolutely fine, just go ahead. And the reason I'm suggesting having these ready is so that we can work and get that sky in whilst before it dries. Sometimes if it's totally dry, it's more difficult to kind of blend the colours in to each other. So I'll take you through that. But starting off, so there's all sorts of different kinds of blue, and it'll depend on what you've got in your kit. But you might have something called an ultramarine blue, which is typical kind of our summer skies when we mix it with a white. So we can try a bit of that. I'm going to use that for some of the colours down here as well. Now you probably only need to start with, if you're working in A4, just like a 5p piece work, size blob to start with. If I work, when I work bigger, I go to a 10p piece to make sure I've got plenty on. And what I'm doing is just setting it out all the way around the outside of my palette, actually, so that what happens then is we just take little bits of the paint and then we mix all the different colours in the middle. So it makes it much more organised. Because I remember a lot of people used to ask me this question at the beginning of a session, at the beginning of a block, well, I just keep mixing all my paints up. What do I do? So, you don't have to do this if you've got a different way, but it is quite helpful to kind of so you don't mix all your paint up in one go and then it's done. I'm going to use something called Payne's Grey, which is a bit of a blue grey colour, but it doesn't matter if you've not got that. You can just add a bit of brown to your blue to make a darker colour. I'll use that mostly a bit later on. So you may have another blue in your kit called something like either Phthalo blue or Prussian blue, and I'd say it's a little bit more of a turquoisey colour. When it makes more of a turquoisey colour when we mix it with white when we try it out. So you could try it. I encourage people this morning, at class this morning, to actually just have a go at trying these colours out. What have I done with my there it is, turquoise one. And then I've got a bit of a turquoisey blue, but just go with what you've got. And if you've got two blues or two yellows, by all means, just try those out. Sorry about that, I think I've just left my colour somewhere. Sorry about that. Right, I think I've changed bags from this morning. So I've got a bit of a turquoise blue, but as I said, you could try a phthalo blue or a Prussian blue as well. And then we can mix that up to try. So I'm just going for colours that I think I might use. I'm also going to pop a tiny bit of a red in there. Now, if you've got, this is kind of quite a warm red. It's got more of a, when I say warm red, it's got more of an orangey tone in it than a blue. You might have something called like an Alizarian crimson in your set, which is it's more of a blue-based red. So actually, when you mix, I'm using this because I'd like to kind of mix it with yellow to get a peachy effect. With Alizarian crimson, you just won't get a peachy effect because of the tone of the paint. So if you've got a different red, even if it's a pillar box red or a scarlet red, that's fine. This is, as I said, this is called Cadian red. It's a warmer red, but you can always just put a little bit of extra yellow with your red to warm it up if you want it to be a bit warmer. But that gives us a really nice peach tone. Sometimes people will say to me, I just can't get that colour. And I'll say, you really can't. You're doing your best with it, but it's actually the colour that you've got, that you might have in your kit. So this is why it's good just to try. I've got, this is a very warm yellow. So this is a cadmium yellow. So cadmium colours are often quite warm. They've got quite a lot of, yellow, but very, very warm yellow base and red base colours. And then, I had it this morning. And then the other one I've got is this one is called a Naples yellow, or you could try a lemon yellow. And again, when we get mixing, it's just nice to actually have a try at mixing it. So I'm just going around the side of the page with that. Give it a shake. Okay. And they're just different. Ones, you know, the lemony yellows are a bit more acidic. There's less kind of like warmth in them. There's less like reds in them. Maybe a bit more, you know, of a bright in there, a bit more of a tint as well sometimes. But they're just nice. It's just nice to try some of the different ones. So I'm going to stop there. But I mean, even when I'm looking, you know, when we come forwards, I might add some other ones. Oh no, I'm not going to stop because probably one of the most important ones that we need today is our titanium white or a white colour. So whichever one you have. Sometimes you have something called mixing white or titanium. It really doesn't matter. Titanium sometimes just has an extra bit of you know, brightness to it. And sometimes people prefer to mix with a mixing white and then just use their titanium white on some highlights, but it doesn't really matter. I've always mixed with both and found them fine. So, you know, that's something that we tend to mix. So once you've got your colours, I would use, if you've got a little palette knife, you can use that to just bring the bits of the colour that we're trying to do. I'm going to start with the blue. If you haven't got a palette knife, it's absolutely fine to use. I just use a small, you know, a small brush. Now I have actually got here a couple of pots of water. Sometimes when we're mixing the blues and then we go to the yellows, it can get a bit muddy, but you can change your water in between. It's not a problem at all. It's absolutely fine to do that. So yeah, so I'm going to try and mix up a blue that I like. And again, as I said, put the emphasis on like, because that's really important. So what I'll tend to do is just move some of my paint to the middle here. And I just have a little rag and I just kind of wipe some of this off really just to get, just so I can get some white. And I'm mixing this with a tint. And it often doesn't look as it does on the paper anyway. So I'm looking at that, and this is ultramarine with white. And this is why I say it's really experimental. So I'm trying that, and I think actually it's not quite the same color, but if I really, really loved that, I would use it anyway instead. But I'm going to go for something a little bit brighter. So I'm not quite going with that. I'm going to bring some of this turquoise in. Or if you've got the Phthalo or Prussian blue or something like that, you can easily pop that in. I think I've got too much of a tint, which is making it really light coloured. And if you don't want it really, really light coloured, you want a little bit more darkness in it, that's fine. But actually, if you did it mixed up a lighter and you really loved it, then just choose it. It's nothing better than connecting with that colour on there. So I'm just popping a little bit more back in. Keep testing. I was saying these testers are quite helpful. A bit more in there. This colour. A little bit more depth in there. And the colour mixing actually is one of the best ways to start to feel more confident, really, because you know by the time you get to popping the colours on, you really like it. Often we kind of go straight in and put it on and then say, oh, I don't like it, and then feel like we've ruined our canvas or whatever. But actually, if you just get in the habit of testing, see what you really like, then it makes quite a big difference actually, because you think, oh yeah. So once I'm happy with them, I'm going to go with that one. Once you're happy with the colours that you've got the colour, the first colour that you've got. I'm not putting it on yet. I'm just going to mix it, get it all mixed up. I will drop a bit of water in so it's ready. I've just dropped it in with this brush. You can use a pipette if you want, if you've got a lot mixed up, or it should feel a bit buttery. You can see that consistency. And you can always try it out and just see, you know, if you put a big bit on, will it cover some of your paper? But when you start to put it on, you want it to feel like it's covering really easily, and it's kind of just spreading like this nice butter, but it covers the back and it's not running down the page. It's not too watery for these background layers. Okay, so I've got that. I'm going to look at my cloud next, this cloud here that's underneath, before I look at the other colours that are overlapping there. So let's have a look at that. So you could go in with your blue. So I'll show you an alternative way of doing it. Oh, I've got my brown on there, have I? I'm going to get a bit of brown on there because I'm going to need that later. I've just got a burnt umber in here, which is a really dark brown, but you might have something, you might have raw umber, or you might have another colour, like another brown in your kit. There's all sorts. So just look at one of the dark ones. It's better to use that than it is a warm brown that's quite reddy coloured. There are plenty of colours, like burnt sienna is quite reddy colour. That's not going to give you the dark effect that you want when you're trying to get a dark colour. So I could go in and I'd probably use a bit of this Payne's grey in here for this cloud. That's one way of getting it, but it's very dark. If I put that straight on, straight from here, that feels quite dark. And that's something else when we're working. You won't know till you have a go, but once you start to work, you might think, oh, that feels really dark against that light background. I'm not keen on that. So that's a good indication that actually prefer your palette to be a little bit lighter in colour. That's fine. It's one of those things that, you know, we only learn through doing it. So I'm going to take a bit of this Payne's grey. I'll show you the alternative way of mixing that. And now I'm going to take a little bit of this colour I've already mixed up. I'm still testing. I don't want it too dark too soon. Let's try that now. Okay, that's feeling better. That's much better. So you could do it that way, or you could try some blue, ultramarine, and a tiny bit of brown, really tiny bit. So we start to learn about the pigments in the colours. You know, things like brown, some of the blues and purples, and some of the reds can be really overpowering. So if you mix a really small amount, you can just keep adding it. So that's going to give me a dark colour like that one, if I take it straight on there. But then I can just mix in a bit of a tint with it as well. And it just lightens it up. But so it's just, I've got a similar way. Let's see what that colour looks like. Okay, maybe a little bit more in, a little bit more brown in there. Maybe the tint was maybe I put a bit too much of a tint in. And we're just thinking these problems through really as we go. And then when we've got all our colours that we're happy with, there we go, let's try that now. So yeah, so that's kind of the cloudy bit in the middle. I'd be happy with that as well. So that's the other way of mixing it. We can get to quite a few colours in a similar way. Not exactly the same tone, but similar. So I've got a couple of colours now ready on my palette. I'm now going to go in and get this one mixed up, which is, it's a bit yellowy, peachy colour. There's a few in there. I'm just going to have to be careful. So you might want to have another, if you want to go and get yourself another water pot, so you can try mixing these light colours without getting this bluey water on your brush, or just go change it. That's absolutely fine. And then I would make sure before I mix up these colours that brush I've been using is really clear of blue. Sometimes you get a little bit down at the bottom of the brush, and then when you start to mix the warm colours, the blue gets in and makes it a bit muddy. So that's something to think about there. So I'm just going to get a tiny bit of red. I'm just thinking about this peachy colour that I can see, but again, it depends. You might be able to see pink in there, or a bit of purpley colour. So you see over here, that feels a bit more purpley. I might actually mix that colour up first. So again, I'm going in for, it's very dark now. I don't want it anything like that at all. It's really dark. So I've just literally mixed a bit of that warm red and the blue, but it's very, very dark. So I'm going to go in with a bit of a white tint. There we go. That's feeling much better. So some of these colours over here, but I would actually be inclined to make that even lighter. We're making all these colours just by having a play and experiment. There we go. And that doesn't matter if it's got blue in it, because it has got blue tone in it. So that's another one lined up. So this is where I need to make sure I'm really clean between the brush bristles. And then when we're ready to go, we'll just enjoy that process of getting that paint on there. So making sure all of that's out before I go on here. So I'm going to go in with, you can try the warm yellow or the cool yellow. I would say try mixing a bit of red and yellow together on one, and then try with the other yellow if you want, see which you prefer. So I'm going in with this warm yellow here, giving it a bit of a mix. And then I'm going in with my white tint. Till I'm happy. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that actually, that's nice. But I'm going to test it just to be sure. And I'm happy to pop that colour in there, and I really like it. I think that's the main thing sometimes, is you mix a colour that's similar, but you think, I don't really, I'm not really too happy with the attracted to that colour, whereas other colours you just think, oh, I love it, I love it. That's one you should go with, always. Always, always. That's what makes us all totally unique when we go with the colour choices we like, because we're all so different. I'm just adding more of the colour. So once you're happy, if you get plenty mixed up, then you're good to go when we start. Again, yeah, slightly lighter, so I like to pop a little bit more ready in there. I'm just pushing it up to the middle there. Sometimes what happens with acrylic as well is your brushes, I tend to roll it off like this when I'm taking it off, because it can puff up all of your brush, all of your bristles. Right, there we go. And then I'm going to go in for a much lighter colour as well. So I'm going to take this Naples yellow, but you can just use, if you've just got one yellow, just add a bit more white to it, that'd be absolutely fine. And I'm going to add plenty of white to that. It's still very yellow, so I need more of a tint. Much more. A bit of water in it as well. Like that. Okay, still, I like that actually. It's not really massively true likeness, but it's lovely. So I'm going to stick just a small amount of white back in there, and I think I'll try that, and then build up the very white colours at the end, which I don't really need to mix. Go. That's nice and bright. Now the only thing I have just noticed is there is some quite lighter blues in amongst down here, so I am also just going to make one slightly lighter version of this for the edges. And if there's any other colours you can see in there, have a go. This is it's quite enjoyable mixing the colours. Just trying, trying them all out. I don't think sometimes we don't do enough of this kind of experimentation as adults, do we? There we go. So there's loads of colours there on the palette. So what I'd be thinking about now, and I'm going to stop after I start doing a bit of this sky, just so we can just check in, see if everybody's okay with that. But I'm just popping this palette further up. So what I'm actually going to do here, I'm going to go in personally with a flat brush, just because I really like to use a flat brush, because I like the how to use it backwards and forwards. So what I would say is, if you start putting the paint on your palette and it feels, so just put this light on, that's a bit bright, there we go. If it feels like it's really hard work, that just means you need to add more paint and a tiny bit more water as well. And so it goes on much, so it should feel like a really easy, nice experience. And if it's stiff and dragging, that means it's not quite enough fluid or paint on there. Some paints are a bit more stiff than others. It just depends. Every single brand is very different. So there we go. So I'm going to start going in with this blue, just with this flat brush. But again, you don't have to use a flat one. And all I'm doing is just going to really enjoy lovely movement backwards and forwards. And you can do that, you can kind of get into the plenty on, so it covers the background really nicely. If you're not sure how far it comes into, but you can see some colours overlapping, don't worry, just kind of just get to pop where it is, and just and spend this time really just getting to feel the feel of the paint on there. It's just really lovely. Sometimes even if we've used them a lot, we have a break from acrylics and move on to something else, and it's just really nice to come back and remember what we can do with them. So then I'm also going to pop in some of this light blue because it's similar to, it's in this same area here, just so I've got that little colour behind it really, and behind the trees, because I need something behind here. So I'm just going to go in with that light blue, just kind of where that tree is going to go there. And when I'm mixing that white blue, look, I can easily just kind of bring it in a little bit with this. So this is why I was saying it's really nice to blend them together. And if you can see that blue going anywhere else, pop a bit of that in there. A little bit behind there. I think there's lighter blue behind this cloud here. So it can look really quite childlike, so don't worry if it does. That's until we've got all of the things in place, it will look it does look quite simple, but that's fine. Just trust the process that when we get all the things we need into place, it will just work really nicely. And that does take time. It's not an instant thing with the acrylics. I'm just popping in some of these on their own where they are. And we're also going to go in with this kind of cloudy, darker cloudy colour here as well, and try and recreate that. And I'm just literally bring that side to side. And I'm just kind of dragging it down a little bit with my brush, but you can use, you know, if you want to go onto a round brush at any point, in fact, you can. I might do for the little bit because this is quite a thin. I usually use a very thick because it's a small, got a small board. So I might just bring that on a little bit. And there's nothing wrong with going in thicker with this paint as well. So I'm just kind of trying to get just this copy the shape really. I'm just kind of bringing it round and enjoying getting that paint on there. Having a little experiment with the, you know, with the way the paint moves and goes on. And a couple more up here, because again, we can drag some of these colours around and change them slightly and all sorts. So just start somewhere is what I'm saying, and then bring a bit around there. Might need to add a little bit, tiny bit more water to mine. Here, might bring some of that blue I've already used in here a little bit as well, just to kind of make it slightly lighter in places around it. And again, you know, we can make these can all transform in a little while when we think about the other colours in there as well. That'll be fine. Okay, so again, make sure your brushes and things are cleaned really well in between this and then go into those warmer tones. Although I might just get some of these purpley bits in before I really think too much about my brushing. So I'm just going to get some of these lovely colours. It's when you start putting the colours on and you think, oh, I really like those. So this is all about getting used to your brushes and seeing which you like, because sometimes you pick up a brush and you think, it just doesn't feel right. And then you pick up another brush and you think, oh yes, I love that one. So just experiment using the brushes as well. Again, and make sure I've got plenty of paint on so it doesn't feel like it's dragging. Just bring in some of these lighter colours in here. Brighter colours, and I'm going to make those a little bit paler. I'm just seeing them now in different places I didn't see them before. It often happens when we start painting. So I'm just going to bring a couple in here underneath there, and I can see one down there now. That's the beauty of observing, is we see all these lovely things here suddenly start to emerge. So don't worry if it doesn't, you know, feel like it should at the moment, because it will start to change. You know, you get to grips with thinking, how far do I drag the paint? Can I move it around? Can I thin it out? What shall I do? Just have a go. We know. Then when you've got the colours in that you're happy with the bluey based ones, you can try the other ones as well. See, I missed that one down there. So I'll put some of this purpley one in here. There we go. Just popping those in. Then our sky starts to, we start to see that, we're getting all the different elements in place. And then I'm going to go in now with this peach colour next. And again, plenty on my brush, so quite often it looks a bit loaded up like that, or the flat brush looks very similar. So I'm just going to bring in some of that now. It's quite bright. But again, because it's still damp and we've got it all ready, we can just blend it. If it feels too stripy in a way, we can blend that quite nicely. That's we're doing it. I'm just bringing those colours in where I can see them. That's all we can do, and just kind of enjoy moving that paint around. Some around this side, that's a bit pinkish. But sometimes we end up just popping it where we want to as well, just because it's nice, because we like a particular colour. Guys have got so many layers to them, haven't they? Really lovely. So I'm going to bring that one out a bit further. You can also, if the edges you're not sure, you can just kind of just wiggle the edges round in a circular motion, just nice and lightly, and that kind of sometimes gets rid of the any thick lines if you don't want them there. You think, oh, I'm not sure about that. Just because it's still damp, it'll blend nicely here. The oranges and purples will be fine there. Keep adding the colours. We're just kind of building up these layers. We're trying to work out as well, really, what comes over the top. And I think, here, these lighter layers do seem to come out. The lighter layers of cloud just seem to layer over the top, which is why we've done the other colours underneath as well. Sometimes it's quite difficult to see which comes first. You've got to really start to analyse it to work it out. So I'm just kind of softening the edge here. That's all. And then thinking about the other colours as well that we've got going on here. So I'm now going to have a little look at some of these yellowy colours. So I'm just going to get my brush a little clean. And I'm going to go in with this one here, it's bright. So again, now you can just start to kind of weave these colours in quite comfortably. You can wiggle your brush, see what feels natural to you when you're doing it. Does it feel, because I kind of, when I'm trying to get like in between things, I'll hold my brush a little bit nearer, so it's like this, so I can have a little bit more kind of control over getting into those little spots. And other times I'll hold it less on the tip and more on the side if I've got like a big amount of colour, like more colour to drag here. So I'm using that on its side a little bit more, so you can just experiment with how that feels to you. Or as I said, you can just go in with a flat brush. Quite often, if I'm working on a bigger surface, I choose a flat brush because I like how it moves. So I'm still going in here. Just building up that lovely colour. And it's quite wispy, so if you have a wispy edge, and again, you think, oh, I'm not quite sure, it feels a bit thick. Then again, just get another brush and just give it a bit of a soften the edge in a way is what we're doing. We're softening it. Just like that. Or if you love the linear, if you think, I really like those lines on there, then leave them by all means. not everybody likes to, you know, some people love to blend and other people like to have like a lots of movement and lots of lines. So I'm just continuing in, just getting all these lovely colours in. Just enjoying that really. So here I'm going over another colour there, over this blue. So how I break that up and kind of make that's quite linear there. And again, I'm just going to soften that there over the top. But you can always put more paint over. You want to put it on more thickly. That's another way of doing it. So I can go in thick like that, look. And then I can just give it a little bit of a soften at the edges there. It's all just to try and enjoy, really. I'm looking forward to coming back and seeing how everyone's getting on with this. I shall just pop a couple more on just to help. Put these in. And then these very bright light bits here in the middle. And again, if you know, I'm going in around this cloud here and it's probably dried because it was a while ago, that's fine. But again, we can just kind of just brush the end nice and lightly. So where these tree line is here, I'm just kind of going a little bit over what I've drawn, just so that I know that that when we put the trees in over the top, if there's any gaps between, we'll have the sky behind it, so it'll be okay. Okay. So just take a little pause there for a moment, see how everybody's getting on. Okay, so we can just kind of keep working with these. Just layer up a little bit more of this powder in here. Popping it in. And again, you know, if you've got something that feels a little bit like it's in a block, you just get a nice soft brush and just kind of pull it a little bit. I need to put some more paint on actually to get that on properly. You can almost kind of put chunks of paint over as well if you want to. If you want to kind of move it around, it's great for that is acrylic. And you can just kind of, you know, really soften it out and kind of like I'm trying to get over things. See what that feels like. And then what we can do, and obviously I've gone in quite a yellow sky, and again, it just depends on what you want to do. But you can go in, just bringing this in a little bit. So you know, you can go much lighter. So I would tend to then just put any really light or bright colours just where they need to go. So I think it's kind of seems to be coming over this side. So I will go in with a much brighter one, so it really pops then where the real light is coming through. But I don't put it everywhere. I just kind of really look at where I think those colours are. And if you don't use it everywhere, that's when you get that lovely contrast, because contrast is so important, and that can be contrast of a dark and a light colour, or it can be bright contrast with the lights. So it just kind of makes it a little bit more effective when we don't overuse the colour. Yeah, I'm just dragging that a little bit because I put it on really thickly. I'm just moving it around a little bit there. Sorry about that. Yeah. Just weaving in some of these. And then there's some lighter ones. It feels like there's a few lighter ones over here. So if you've got, the other thing we can do is if you've got some cloud that goes over the top, but it's just kind of thinly going over, we can just water that down over the top. So I'm just going to get a little bit of white here. I'm just going to water it down a bit more than I would normally. And just kind of bring it over the edge here. So, and it will be more translucent. So you'll still be able to see how we do fog. It's the same way. We just have a very thin layer over the top there, and it gets very wispy then. Yeah. Bring that into other areas as well. So yeah, I mean, we just it's just really, you know, kind of just keeping working into it, and then you'll get to a point where you just think, oh, actually, I'll leave that, and then I'll come back to it, because sometimes we can put too much into things. Very easy to kind of keep working on it, keep working on it. So just get to a point where you think, okay, I'm going to come back to that, because what will happen is it will start to transform. Like anything we do with acrylics, it starts often to transform once we get the next section in, which is these hills. So the hills actually will kind of create the outline, really create the shape for that sky showing through, and it'll look completely different. We kind of get very zoned into these areas. So I will look again, work the ones that are further back and then come forward. So these back ones here. And if you look, we know that those have got white snow on, but they're actually not white in this particular light. So this is where we can go for a little bit of a smaller colour, a smaller brush to get them in. And I tend to go in, put the darks in. Something like this, we don't have much colour showing. There's only like a couple of colours in there, and that's fine, because what we don't want is that picture jumping forward because we're putting loads of detail in it. We want the background to stay in the back. And the rule of thumb is that cool, dark colours generally recede and go backwards, appear to go back, and warm, light colours tend to come forwards. So we don't want too much warmth or very, very light or detail in the back. We want it to stay in the back. So I'm going to pop the shadow on there. And actually, I'm going to use kind of a purpley colour, I think, for that. If you haven't got a purple colour, you can just mix one with your red and your blue, which is what I'm just going to do now. And I'm also, as well as using the red and the, let's try that. It's quite dark. It's not quite as dark as I want it. So I'm actually going to pop in a little bit of brown in there as well. To really, oops, I've got some blue in there by accident. To make it even darker. So let's try that. A bit more blue in. And we have to just kind of work out what proportions of how, you know, how much paint to put in to get the darkest colour. That's all trial and error. So there we go. I'm going with that one. Let's just pop a bit of Payne's green as well. And then all I'm going to do is just start to put those shadow in and just kind of create a little bit of the shape of this mountain. the shadow in with my brush. So I'm pulling down some of the shapes that I can see, but I'm not, that's the maximum level of detail I would put in there. Really don't want too much detail, just enough to know it's got some shape to it and there's some shadow, and that will be absolutely fine because I've got to put the top on it as well. And the same with this, you know, we get behind it, we get this dark area of where the shadow is coming in the back of this mountain here. So again, we don't always see everything. We can just see it's coming behind there. This one here as well has got plenty of shadow on. And the reason I'm going in with the shadow first is so that we make sure that we don't flatten off any of those other mid-tone colours. So there we go. I'm just popping in these dark colours in there. So sometimes it's just a suggestion because our eye actually makes up the rest of this, what's going on. We just have enough for the eye to say, oh yeah, there's something happening there. So I am going to pop a little bit of a shadowy line here just because I can see, we need to see, you know, that there is the edge of this as well. And then also we get much, it's kind of more browny at the front, isn't it? A bit cooler behind. So I'm going to look at the shadow that goes in here. I'm going to make this slightly more brown. So all I'm doing is I'm taking this dark brown and adding that colour to it. And then we've got the, you know, it just helps separate because that brown is actually warmer than putting the blue in it. It's still very dark, which is what we want. Now I'm just kind of popping in these areas at the front that have got these kind of shadows, but they're a bit more brown in colour. Popping that in. And we're just kind of observing what we can see really. And if you can't, you know, if you can only see little bits, sometimes it's quite handy to have it on an iPad or a phone, and you can kind of, you can get into, you can like open the detail up a little bit if you want to really look in at the what's going on in there. I'm just bringing this all the way across here. And actually, I think it's what we've got are some, you know, on the top here before where this light area is of where the light's catching the top of the snowy bank here on the side of the loch. We've got some trees in there. So I'm just going to use this round brush, which is a very thin one. I'm just going to go along and put that tree line in. I'm not actually going to use any other paint in there because my board is very light. I'm just going to go along and recreate this sense that there's some trees along this line. Just where I can see them. Might not be everywhere. Like that. And then I'm just going to finish off by popping a little, you know, making sure I've got the tops of these mountains in, and they're quite turquoisey. That's what I see anyway. So I'm going to go in with my, add a bit of blue to that though, I think. It's a bit brighter. They look quite blue. I think, you know, it just shows where you've got things in the shade. You just get these very different colours. I'm just popping the tops of these mountains in really. Top of this one as well. If it feels if the colour that you're putting on feels too dark, you can always mix it with a tint. Just pop a little bit of white in there as well. Let's see what you think. Yeah, so it's this suggestion actually, and then as all, we put in all the other details as they start to come forward. We've got a bit of an area of white there. Then we start to get, a much truer picture of that sky as well. The sky all of a sudden seems to really make sense when we get the rest of these areas in. So I am just going to pop in a line of white here where this bank is, which is quite straight, this bank of snow. Now, if you think, oh, I don't know how I'm going to do that, the lady said that to me today. What you can do is get some masking tape if you've got some. If you haven't got masking tape, just get a piece of paper and just put a line where you want this bank to come up to. Or you can do it with a piece of paper. So you can bring your paper up to the edge of there and then just paint a little line over the top of it. So you get this bank of white there. And we know it's going kind of up. If you want, I mean, you can bring it up if you want to. I've just not, because I've got that there. And I'm bringing this line all the way over, and then the bank comes down a little bit, but I'm just popping that in there. So then when you peel it off, it's nice and straight there. When that's dry, we can do the same the other side to get this nice dark line, which we tend to get underneath, because what we tend to have is the shadow wherever we have a bank or something, the edge of grassed area or anything, underneath it, we nearly always get a very dark shadow line in the water, and that helps us to tell that it's water as well. But I'm not going to pop that dark shadow line in for the moment till it's dry, otherwise it will kind of all mix in a little bit. I'm going to try and keep that nice and bright. So I'm just going to work my way across here now at these trees and these little bits of foliage. So again, you can look at some of the colours that you've used. I'm sticking with these brown ones here. I'm just going to, there's quite a lot of almost like trees kind of coming down the bank, isn't there? But again, just see what brush you've got. Have an experiment with using the tip of it or the side of it, and just see what feels right to you whilst you get those in. And again, it's a suggestion, so we need hardly any detail in this background at all. It's just, with our eyes working out what's going on. It's really nice. Sometimes and then obviously as we come along here, this bank here, we've got some more kind of tree trunks, haven't we, and some foliage. It's difficult to tell what's what at the moment. I'm going to go in where I can see these kind of trunks, and then I'll work between that. That's all we can do. So decide, again, decide what colour it is. Has it got any warmth to it? Do you want to go in with brown? Do you want to go in with a dark colour with adding some blue? What is that colour? And I suppose on this side, we're working out where the bank goes as well. I probably might put a little bit of white once that's dried over in here, just to lighten that up. And I probably will put, it's not bright white all the way across this bank here. If you look really carefully, we've got highlights of white where the sun catches, but in between it's that kind of pale blue colour. I don't know if you can see that too. And this is what happens with the snow. When we look at colour, when we're really observing it, you can see that snow, when it's in the shade, takes on this all sorts of different blue tinges. It's really interesting. So I'm going to go along that bank and paint. Comes down here, so I'm following the line of trees there. I'm going to actually paint this in blue, and then I'm going to work in some areas of snowy light colour in between it. But then as we're coming around, it's getting lighter and brighter, so I'm going to add that. So I'm just going to go in here, pop in some of those light areas on the bank where it catches the light. And it's less straight, this one, isn't it? Because you can it just catches out, little bits of it. The more straight bit will be the dark line that we pop in. So there we go. There's some more snowy banks. It'll make more sense when we've got those trees in as well. here. I'm going to bring this snowy bank that's quite bright through here, just through there. I'm going to pop it behind the tree that's going to go over the top of it. You might not be able to see it all, so we've got the edge of the watering, but that's fine. You can still pop it in, and then you can see where you want it to come out to. And then pop in some on this rock here, but again, there's lots of blue, so I'm going to try and avoid coming too far around until I've got my water in. But if you have just any desire to do that, that's absolutely fine. So I'm just looking at the tones in here now, and again, this is a suggestion because it's still quite far back. So I'm just looking at where these tree trunks might go in. I've got some, I'm going to go in with my dark brown in here, mixing that in the palette. And I'm going to go in with a bit of blue as well. Really kind of, because it is very dark in there. And have a little look at where I can see an obvious tree trunk here, these taller ones. But again, you don't need to go in really straight even. You can kind of break it up because the foliage is coming over the top. So then we're looking at what else is in there. There's some quite dark shady bits. It's deciding, are you going to make the shady bits as dark as the tree? At the bottom, underneath the trees, we often get these patches. I think I'm going to go in with just a slightly lighter tint of what we've just used along the bottom here, so it's not quite as dark, and I can always darken it up after, but just to suggest that at the base it's quite dark there. All the way along. And it's looking really strange now, which which it always does when we've got no foliage on there, but it's really good to get the trunks on because it gives a base as to where you can put the foliage. I'm just going to go up to a slightly bigger brush there. And then start to think about the colours in here. Now you could even go in with a bit of green at this point if you wanted something a bit more greeny. And to just add a little bit of sap green, which is a slightly more leafy green. And then I'm going to add some of this blue to it. So I'm not going in with complete green here. I'm going to go in, make it a bit of a bluey green, because that's the colour I'm seeing. And as I said, whatever you see and you think, oh yeah, I like that, let's test that. Might be just a little bit too vivid, that actually. Okay. In contrast, I'm going to go in with a slight touch of ultramarine blue in there. And this is all we can do. We can just keep trying, trial and error. Oh, what can I add? What can I add to do I think to get that colour like that? I'm happy with that now. So all I'm going to do is where I can see this kind of, where I'm seeing these colours of foliage, I'm just going to dab it on. We're still dabbing some of the other colours as well, like the darks in between the foliage as well. But I'm just going to make a start by popping these colours that I can see in here. And again, I'm just really kind of working top down, just dabbing them, dabbing the sides over, because as I said, the eye makes up a lot of what's going on here. And I'll need to go over to break some of these foliage up with some lighter ones and some darker ones, but it just gives us a start by putting this mid-tone on here. There we go. A start is always good, isn't it? So there we go. So now I'm going to go in between a bit more and kind of just put some of these darker colours now. Now I can see where they are. There we go. And then even in the foliage, so where you get these dark areas of in the foliage is where you get the depth coming through. So some of these will be very deep. Some of the foliage on it will go right back into that tree. And the dark helps so we can see the depth there. And then the lights I'm going to add finally over the top will give us a different feel. So I'm going to go in with some blues before I go in with any lights, because when I'm looking again, is it all white? No, I'm not sure it is. So I'm just kind of trying to get some foliage over the top that's slightly lighter. So I'm going in with this blue. And these are the front bits of foliage on the trees. These bits we can see kind of coming through. We're just layering it up. A bit more, and it comes across there. That'll give us the thickness that we need, that we're looking for. Because the light colour helps us to these to come forward a little bit. So we've got this depth, we've got the ones in the background, we've got the deep branches of firs, and then I'm going to go in with the lightest. So where I can see definite white areas, again, I'm just blobbing that on. We can do this with any foliage on any of those trees, that are especially the ones that are in the background, because we can't see a huge amount, but it just catches the very light ones, catch those little bits on them. On here. There we go. Just popping that on. Making a bit more depth in here as well. You can see some of the darker areas in there. So that's it. I mean, and again, what we're trying to create is an artist's impression. We're not trying to recreate that exact photograph. What we're doing is we're taking elements from it and putting it in our own words, really, with our brush. So yeah, so there we go. So what I'd be thinking about now is I can pop in some of this tree here or not. I'm going to leave that till the end though, because I want to kind of get some of this lake in here. But I'll just take a little pause there and just see how everybody's getting on, because we've done quite a bit there. Okay, so having a think now about these reflections and things, how we get those. So what we tend to find, obviously we've got this bank of snow, haven't we, here, or bank. I'm just going to pop in some more of this, some more white into this bank, because it's a little bit unclear as to what it is at the moment. And what we tend to find, I did mention this before, and you'll start noticing this if you're near any bodies of like water in the next few weeks. You might catch yourself looking, but when you look into the water, there is always this like very this dark shadow underneath the lightness of the top of the water, because it's where we see the edge of the bank reflected. So obviously I popped that there. I'm going to see if it's dry enough. I'm actually going to pop this back over the top, because I want a nice dark line in there now underneath, because I want to get this what we see naturally. So I'm going to go for nice and dark. Now, sometimes actually you can, if it's easier for you to turn your paper around, because I know a lot of people do struggle with getting a straight line. So I'm half painting basically on top of this bit of paper here, this bit of tape, but you can actually do this just with a bit of paper. I've done it plenty of times with paper. I'm just painting down, because quite often it's easier for us to paint downwards than it is to paint across. And it goes right back to learning handwriting, actually. That it's very natural for us to kind of go below a line with our handwriting. So hence it's quite a nice way of doing it, going downwards. So that gives us kind of quite more of a sharper line there. Now we can wiggle this other bit round that goes round here, because we can see where this is a separate bank here. It kind of comes round, and I'm just capturing underneath it, you see. What it does as well is our brain typically knows that that's water as well, because sometimes these, like the way it's reflected is so calm in there with not too much, and it's quite diffused, the colours together, that it's sometimes difficult to see there is actually water there when we're trying to paint it. So things like this to help us really know what's going on. So I'm just getting the edge of this bank in place here, and you know, where you get a curved bank, you can just kind of pop it ad hoc. You don't have to put a big straight line of, and it moves in and out a little bit. But then we'll start to kind of say, oh, right, I really know what's going on once we start to put the shadow in. Typically, what actually happens is, as a general rule, and I say it's a general rule because it does depend on the weather conditions, what time of the day it is, or sometimes also it depends on the time of year. But generally, what we tend to find is that the dark colours are reflected a little bit more lightly, and light colours are reflected slightly more darkly. So I suppose we have a less contrast in the water because the two colours are a bit nearer together, if that makes sense. So I suppose they're a bit more, they're more similar. So as I said, that's a general rule, just kind of to start off with. But as we go through the seasons, we can notice, notice a little bit more. So these colours here, when we're looking at them, we can't really tell too much about these greens and things. We can see a little bit of a hint of it, but we can't see the colour palette as much. We certainly can't see the light ones reflected. The lightest ones tend to reflect more darkly. So like the white here on the trees, you can't see that there. So it's a bit more muted palette. So I would go in and see what we can see reflected. And again, when I say it's diffused, it's just much more, it's more kind of blended together. So I'm going to go in with my flat brush for this and just make sure that your colours don't get muddy. And that is one thing to watch, because as we go through, we kind of get really, really into it, which is brilliant. But it can also mean that we end up with those lovely colours being muddied at the last minute. So just make sure your brushes are clean between. So yeah, so here I can see like we've got a few bands of colours and we tend to not get too much detail again. So I'm going to go in with these bluey colours. I have to mix a bit more. I'll use a flat brush because sometimes when we've got in water, we tend to have, sometimes we have, it's underneath here, sometimes we have just kind of the bands of the trees coming down and it looks like straight down. So a flat brush is quite nice because you can get that kind of shape with it coming straight down in patches. Same here on this side, we've got, again, it just depends on what colours you want to do it. I'm kind of just trying to create what I can see. There, we've got these bands of colours, haven't we, as well? So over here, it's definitely a bit more diffuse. Pop these in. But we don't, we're just having a little go. You don't need to get, every little last mark in there doesn't have to be perfect. Just get a general idea. And again, our eye is very good. Our brain's very good at making up the rest of what's going on in here. So then I'm going to pop in some of these darker ones. I think we've got quite a lot of squashed in, haven't we, in there? So I'm just going to pop a little bit of brown and a little bit of that Payne's grey in there, and just kind of keep dragging that shape up, because that's what I'm kind of seeing here. Just kind of mix it together a little bit. Flat brush helps you kind of get a little line with it as well. And then we've got the bottom of this mountain coming up here. It's a bit, look at the shape of it. So I'm just going to kind of drag this up. But it's not quite as, obviously it's softer in the water than the harder lines that we've got up there. So we've got some of these colours now are going to reflect slightly, these darker ones are slightly lighter here. Bring those colours over here. You can use the edge of your brush as well to get some of the, follow the shape down of the trunk like that in the water. That's quite helpful, and then it just gives us a sense of the trees being there as well. Okay. We'll make sure that's really clean, and then pop in some of the other colours that we can see there reflected. So just have a little look at how you think they are in there. I'm going to do this a little bit purpley. I don't think I've got much of that purple left from before, but it's going to be much lighter. In here. Again, it's quite soft, so you can kind of bit blue in there as well. So yeah, if you can just make those shapes a bit softer in there. Same with some of these hills here. Just slightly lighter than that brown hill, but it's reflected a little bit more blue. We've got some of the bluey in there. But then these hills coming over again, they're slightly lighter, aren't they? So it's you know, I think following that rule of thumb, I suppose. It does tend to be lighter. But again, just go for the colours that you're naturally drawn to as well. And try that. I'm just going to bring some of these bright colours I can see. Similar tone. Just bring these into the water's edge here. Then I'm still going to pop a few shadowy ones in there as well, in between, because we do have the shadow. It's just not quite perhaps as dark. Maybe the tops of a couple of trees in there. So it's just what we do. We're just really observing those differences in colours. The fact that it's a little bit softer. Contrast isn't quite as bright in the water. It's a little bit of a lighter one there, so I'm going to pop in a little bit there. That's supposed to be that the big mountain at the back, but it's very soft, isn't it, that colour there? We can add some of those softer colours as well onto the mountain, so we can still see it's the shape of the mountain reflected. So we've started to kind of get quite a bit in place there, really, which is good. Just breaking it down into sections, I think, is really helpful when we're doing any painting at all. You know, it just helps us approach everything in a much more manageable way, because it can be quite overwhelming. So I'm just going to pop in some of these shadows that are here as well. These shapes before I go on to this main body that's going to be a bit more smooth. So it's not dissimilar. This isn't dissimilar to what we did earlier on when we had lots of colours and things ready. And I think, you know, there's nothing wrong with making this slightly more watery as well, because we can make it much more soft as well. So yeah, so just go for it. Have a little look at the different colours. And again, the ones in the sky, the lighter ones are reflected slightly darker, and the darker ones will be reflected slightly lighter. So here, these very light ones are slightly darker there. So you can apply that, or you can just have a go at getting it on if you want to. If you're getting to the point where you think, oh gosh, there's been such a lot to think about, because I know we do cover quite a lot. It's absolutely fine to you know, just have a go at getting something in the water. And I'm ignoring all of those stones in there. So I've gone in with a flat brush, just want to get some of these yellows. I'm just going in with a nice white yellow. I can't really pop it over the bottom of my so this is where I'm trying to get a feel for the water here. And going in here, up to the edge, and you can go up to the edge, as we've got a very clear kind of reflection of that there. And then just start to kind of weave your colours in there. You can see. Enjoy doing that, really, because it's really fun, isn't it? Yeah, and you can actually, if you like, if you're finding you like a bit of texture, then, get some lines and things in there from side to side if that's what you really like, because this is quite a smooth lake, but it doesn't have to be in your representation of it. It could be a little bit more linear if you want it to be with a few ripples and things. So I'm going definitely side to side with my flat brush because I just find that really easy. Yeah. Going underneath all of those rocks and everything. Any lighter areas you want to pop in there. And you can go in more, if you're enjoying putting it on more thickly, then by all means pop it on more thickly because we can still blend that. I'm just going in with all these different colours. Feels a bit warmer this bit than the sky did there. A bit more purpley in places again, but again, it just depends on what you see. So you can get it on nice and thickly, and then you can kind of really work into it if you want to. See what feels right when you do it with your brush like that. See what you're really favouring as you work. Is it more linear or is it just like really getting into it with your brush? Get some other colours in there and get some these kind of purpley colours again. I'm going in with a bit of just a white tint in here as well. This is you can go cooler or warmer with the reds that you've got in there. And again, if you're wanting to thin it down. If you want to put it on more thickly, have a go. So I'm kind of just, with this flat brush, you can create these kind of soft edges. You've got it on, if you've got it thick enough. And also, you can thin it down as well to drag it over. So there'll be a lot of stones and things rocks going in this half too. If you really like the idea of, getting this sense of movement going across as well, then, bring some of these darker ones right out if you want to, all the lighter ones. And you can also have an experiment with moving them down. Move them down and see what happens if you do it that way. Like, the water looks like it's coming down in this way. I've been stopping you, just having a go at all of these little different techniques and seeing which you like best. Going with a bit of light colour in there before I start to put these shadowy ones in. But again, we can even change. You can actually even change the colours as well if you want to. So I'm just going to go in with a little bit of that colour that I had earlier, but it seems to be it is quite soft, isn't it, in the water? Just bring it straight out from wherever it comes from. Go underneath the shadow, it might go underneath the bank as well. These colours come out from. You can make thinner areas or you can make like real blocks. So I could put that sideways there, look, and bring out a real block that way and kind of drag it out more thickly onto the water, or you can go sideways into it quite often we only use our brushes in one or two certain ways, you know, but it's nice to actually try experimenting using your brush in a different way as well. And bring that underneath there. And then if there's any light ones you want to kind of finish off with, by all means, go in with some lighter ones. Again, you can drag it. Make sure your brush is clean in between though if you want to go over kind of in a lot of detail. Yeah, it just kind of catches the really light ones, just kind of catch light. And you can do that with a bright as well. You can go with the one that's slightly brighter if you wanted to. It all gives this feeling of it, of the you know, of the quietness and the stillness. I'm just tapping that now, so just to soften it down so it's not so hard, you can kind of just move that paint around a little bit, just to get exactly what you want with the feel of it. And then from there, I think I would probably just have a little look at these other little bits that we've got in the foreground here. And then look at those, placing those rocks or stones on. And again, it's artistic license completely, so you don't have to put in things you don't want. So if you don't like that tree there, don't put it in. It's really important when we're you know, in doing our own painting, that you have artistic license to choose what goes in. And you'd be amazed how many people leave things out because they don't like the way it's going to spoil the picture, or they don't like a particular tree, or certainly a pylon or something like that. There's an awful lot that goes on. So absolutely, because it's our artist's interpretation of it, you know, leave out something you don't like. I'm just going to pop this in just very quickly. So this is where, like, the opposite of a little technique you can use, where you just hold your brush really near the bottom, and it's kind of a bit brave, but it just gives a really loose feel to tree trunks and things like that. So all I'm doing here is I'm just kind of building up a bit of movement. So I've got some branches which to you know, to add some foliage and things like that to, or some snowy areas. So I'm just crisscrossing them, but because I'm not holding it down, I'm kind of like forcing myself to just go lightly with it. And you can crisscross all of those interesting branches and things like that, just to start with, just to give yourself a start before you start putting on any colours or anything like that, because then there's some, whatever you see, whether it's a purpley or a white. I'm seeing a purple in a minute. I'm going to be seeing a lot of that tonight. So I'm going to bring in, there we go, right. So I'm going to bring in now some of these purpley branches. Add some of these to it. We're just building each area up, but as I said, you know, you don't need to put, if you don't want to pop it in, well, don't put it in. I just tend to do it just to demo what things you can do. And I'm just going to go back in with a few darks, just pop those back in before I go up with the light ones. And then finish off with a few of these light. Just popping a few little highlights on these branches. Higgledy-piggledy. And again, you know, you don't need to do every single one, just pick a few out, because the brain works it out when it's looking at a picture. You know, we can see we start to know that there's a tree there. And I'm going to stop there with that particular tree, because I want to come back over this side and have a little go at these rocks. I'm just looking at the time, actually. Sorry, we've run over by a few minutes, haven't we? I'll just take a pause there and mow. Yeah, so when you've started to get where you're happy with your water, we can just have a little go at getting some of the details in here with these stones and things like that, can't we? In the edge of anywhere as well. So I'm just going to pop in a couple of bits I've missed. That's quite light coming off here. So I'm just going to pop that in the edge of that water. But then I'm going to go in with all the darker areas here with these stones. So I'm going to go straight in with, I'm actually going to go straight in with just normal, the brown. I'm not mixing any blues in because this brown on its own is warmer. As soon as we put a blue base colour in, then it is slightly on the cooler spectrum, even though it's a brown. So I'm just going to go in and get this, put the edges of these stones there. And we can pop a bit of contrast if we can see any in a mo, but I'm just going to, that's the edge of one. Just going to mark like where the shadow is coming around the other side of that. Because there's the water's edge, which is actually quite in the shadow, isn't it there? And that's quite shadowy down that side on the edge of this bank. So I'm just going to pop that in as well. We can see where the edge of that bank is now, that tree is sitting on. So you can kind of work your way around these little areas. That comes out there, little bank. And then I'm going to pop in just the edge of these stones as well. So I'm going to pop that there. Just, we've got some kind of like the edges of the, looks like a big rock actually, doesn't it? So wherever you can see a little pattern, just kind of get that nice texture on with your brush. Dab it on. Use the edge of your brush or the end or the side, whichever feels most comfortable. I'm just going to get general texture in there, and then I'm also going to start to choose a couple of these rocks that are in the middle here. So I'm going to use, and again, just be selective. You can pop the whole thing in, or you can just pop a few in. I'm just going to pop a few in to start with here. So I'm just going to get the shape, and then I'll sort the colours. I'm just going to paint it all in one colour, and I'll sort the other tones once I get into there. It'll look a bit strange, just kind of propped up on the edge at the minute, but that's fine. We will sort that. That little one there. Put that one coming out here. So again, it's your artist's impression. Just leave out what you don't want and leave in what you do want. There's some grass coming through here. I'm going to pop those on because I quite like that difference in texture. Just going to pop a few of those in there. It's quite nice. But I'm not going to put all that big bit there, but you can if you want to. I'm just going to focus on these. I might make this, I might just put one in and then put a bit of snow on it. So again, with any of these stones and things like that, what you tend to find is it's very dark underneath. Look, that side of this, one of the sides of the stone that's in the shade is this side. So if you want to make that even darker, just add those bluey tones that we were talking about. So with your brown, you can go in with a bluey tone that's much darker. Or even purple you can add to it, that'll make the brown darker. So what I'm doing is creating a bit of a 3D feel. So wherever you see that shadow, just go around there. And same on this side. So we're just looking at where the bit in the shade is. That already starts to then give us a little bit of, see a lot of that is on this side in the shadow. Just make the edge that goes into the water really nice and solid line, because it just does that when we're looking. Can't really see underneath it, that's the thing, and that's when you get this harder line edge. There we go. And then we can just alter slightly you know, if there's any slightly different tones on there. So I can see something a bit yellowy on the top of there, maybe where we're getting a bit of reflection. There's not too much going on there, just a little bit of a slight change in colour there. That flat one we can see. There's not much here. This one over here, I can't really see much contrast other than a tiny bit of maybe of a bluey colour on top, just very slight. So I'm going to pop just a hint. Sometimes it's picking up the colours that we can see. And this one's got a little bit more contrast here. So there's a little bit of a colour kind of around the back there. We're just paying attention to the shapes on each of those rocks. That's all we're doing. And then a little bit of yellowy colour in the middle. I'm going to go for warm yellow. And we've got that there. It gives us a hint that the rock's got something going on. This one here, I'm just going to pop that, and then some of that snow. So I'm going to pop on a tint with blue, because again, the snow over here is still not really bright white. That's what I'm seeing anyway. So just pop that snow on. You can just kind of dot it on, and then just so I know it's snow, I am going to add a bit of white to it as well, just so it's got some contrast. Might just go over an area there. I might just add a little bit to this one as well. Just to give it a bit of interest. And then we've got the last bit is just this, the snow down here. And again, we've got bluey tones in here. It's fascinating, isn't it, when you look at these wintry tones, where some of them are bluey. So I would just go in with this mid-tone of blue and white together, rather than trying to kind of mix it up. That's just how I work. Because it's a small area, I'll add in the very brightest whites as well. So we kind of get these angular shapes, don't we, with the snow that's going on here. So we can recreate, we'll know it's snow because of some of the shapes we're putting in. It's a bit angular. And then we've got the highlights of it as well. Lovely, isn't it? It's really nice, the snow. Just a bit grassy, some of that's got a bit blue in it as well. And then we can kind of go in a little bit more now and just make that, put the highlights of where the snow actually goes in a bit more detail. I'm going to go for a smaller brush there, just to get those last bits in. There we go. So where there's a real highlight, you get a real block of, you know, like a really bright area of snow in the, it's got the light on it. Pop that in, and that just makes all the difference really to the shape and everything. Helps with the 3D-ness of the top of the rock as well. We're just being selective. And this being selective makes more contrast, so that we do get these three, you know, the 3D effect really. There we go. And then you can just have a little look, you know, as you're going through and thinking, is there anything else I want to put on, or shall I leave it? Sometimes actually it's really helpful to leave it overnight and then have a look in the morning, because sometimes when you get into the end of 2 hours, it's quite a long time to concentrate. And sometimes we like what we've done, sometimes we don't. It's sometimes really helpful to kind of pop it up on a shelf somewhere, or on a, I don't know if you've got like a ledge or a fireplace or somewhere, and then come back and have a look the next day, and it makes such a difference. It really does. But I hope you enjoyed that one. It's you've took an awful lot in, so well done. It's lots of beautiful colours.